today's webinar. I'm Lisa Bryant, Red Angus Director of Communications. This webinar is being recorded for those who couldn't join us today. If you have joined by phone, we recommend you switch to a desktop or tablet if possible so that you can view the slides presented today. During the first week of January, an EPD Blanking Initiative will go into effect. This initiative was a recommendation of the Breed Improvement Committee and approved by the Red Angus Board of Directors in June. We're going to kick off today with a few words from Red Angus First Vice President Tony Ballinger. Tony also chairs the Breed Improvement Committee. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks for everybody joining this call to try to understand and learn more about what this project looks like. This started about almost 3 years ago, so it has spanned a couple of presidents, a couple of geneticists, and we've been very active in debating and looking at this over that period of time. So I think Lindsay will talk more about it here in a minute, but I think the moral to the story on why we're doing this is to get more data. And as we get more data, it helps our accuracies. And at the end of the day, we as members all win. And I think if we'll all step back and think about that is the original intent on this entire project. So is to make our database more robust and more accurate.
All right, thank you, Tony, for explaining why the committee and the board took this action and how this will help the Red Angus breeds data. Next, our Director of Breed Improvement, Dr. Lindsay Upperman, is joining us today to discuss what EPD blanking is, why this initiative is being done, which animals will be affected, and how it may impact you. Later, Lindsay will be answering frequently asked questions gathered from our membership that were submitted for this forum. At the conclusion of this webinar, we will provide information on how you can set up an appointment with Lindsay to answer more specific questions. Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Lisa, and hello to everyone. So let's get started. So essentially, we're going to be talking about the EPD Blanking Initiative. And just to kind of reiterate a little bit of what Tony Ballinger was talking about, the main reasons for this protocol or initiative was to gather more data, both in the form of phenotypes and genotypes from the membership. This not only helps to increase the database accuracy, but it also helps those selection tools that you all utilize within your herds on a daily basis. Again, this was discussed over a 3-year process. So this was actually before my time of joining Red Angus within the Breed Improvement Committee, and then was discussed probably with, that same amount of time in the boardroom as well. And then just as far as timing goes, it was approved by the board in January of 2023, and there were slight modifications in June 2023 that were made. So the initiative is as follows. So the Breed Improvement Committee recommended to blank EPDs on animals for growth traits with an accuracy of less than 15. And then just so everyone's aware, as far as accuracy goes, usually it's displayed in 0 to 1. And in Reds Pro, it is 0 to 100. So this is going to just be that display of what we see in Reds Pro. And, on the animal's registration page. And so then for dry matter intake, it would be less than 5 for accuracy, carcass traits less than 5, calving ease traits less than 5, and maternal traits less than 1. And this is essentially for the 2023 calf crop, unless that animal has genetically enhanced or genomically enhanced EPDs, and then they will all be released. And this will start at 8 a.m. on January 3rd, 2024. And so just a little bit of continuation there. So again, the EPDs will be blanked when that animal is first registered. And then as we get data in, as genomics are done on that animal, etc., that's when they will be updated weekly based on what the IGS genetic evaluation sends our way. And so then they will be either blanked or unblanked as we go along in that process with the genetic evaluation. So again, when an animal is genotyped, this would be on those GGP platforms at Neogen. So either an ultra low density, a low density, or a high density test can get that same genotype for those animals. Those EPDs will then be released once those results are sent out and incorporated into the genetic evaluation. So just a little bit more knowledge on the trait groups. So the committee decided to kind of group different traits together. And so for growth traits, when we are considering those, there's 4 that we're talking about. So it's birth weight, weaning weight, yearling weight, and average daily gain. And so ultimately, when we're thinking about these trait groups, it was mainly to kind of get those 2 or 3 traits that are limiting factors and get more data on those specific ones. And so that's why these groupings were then utilized. We'll get into a little bit more on the next slide about exactly which ones are the limiting factor in these groups. But again, intakes by itself, we just have dry matter intake within that. For the carcass traits, all 5 are included. So it's back fat, carcass weight, ribeye area, marbling, and yield grade. And then calving ease includes both calving ease direct and calving ease maternal. And then the maternal traits are heifer preg, metabolic energy, stayability, and milk. But with these traits, they are not going to be grouped together. So that means not one of them will affect the others. They're all going to be treated individually. So with that, just talking a little bit more about the limiting traits. So for instance, if we think about growth traits, there were those 4: birth weight, weaning weight, yearling weight, and average daily gain. So as a membership, with THR, we do a really great job of submitting birth weights and weaning weights. However, yearling weights and average daily gain are not very significantly submitted. And so that's where we're kind of limited on those records. So that group kind of got together just in order to try to get more yearling weight and average daily gain records. But of course, if those are very hard for your operation economically or just in general to collect for you as the producer, you can always genotype your animal to undo those. And then again, for carcass traits, it was back fat and marbling that limited those as a whole. And then the maternal traits, they are treated individually, but heifer preg and metabolic energy would be the 2 that are more common to not meet that threshold on that accuracy. So just a little bit of an example. So this would be a depiction of what you would see once January 3rd comes around. And so for this example, for this particular animal, it looks like metabolic energy and heifer preg are the 2 traits that they do not fall above that given threshold for accuracy. So in this respect, both the EPD as well as that percentile rank will be blanked, but the accuracy will be displayed in red of what the accuracy was for that given trait. Again, this is just an example, so just take that into regard. But then as you can see further to that left side of your screen, the indexes, herd builder, which would incorporate some of those maternal traits, then is going to be blanked as well, as that would be within that index. And then of course, ProS is an index that incorporates both herd builder and grid master. And so that one would be blanked also. So there's quite a few areas to look at that would be blanked in regards to this animal. However, if we go to just another example, we can see this one was genotyped. The siren dam qualifies, not that that matters in this instance, but the animal also falls above very high, actually within his accuracies for the given traits. So that's why everything's displayed. There's nothing red, no blanks that exist on this given animal. now we just wanted to go in and discuss a few other parameters. So if we think about it, when we blank EPDs, there's quite a few things that we utilize as producers and through the membership that also would incorporate those EPDs. So again, as we just discussed on that example animal, the indexes will be blanked if a given trait that is incorporated in that index is blanked as well. Furthermore, there's the progeny calculator. So kind of that calculation of kind of seeing where that calf crop is on a given sire and dam mating. Those EPDs, if they are blanked for that sire and dam, they will also be blanked within that progeny calculator. And then for the show program, this is one that is a little bit different, but as far as Cattlemen's Congress goes, it will be unblanked. That program will be pulled before this initiative goes into effect on January 3rd. But for the Denver Stock Show, it will be blanked because that show program will be pulled about a week and a half after this goes into effect. And then, for instance, on an animal search page, I had to kind of take out those individual animals' names and registration numbers. But as you can see here, they're still going to show up blanked in that animal search. So if they are blanked for weaning weight or yearling weight, they'll still have that red accuracy value because it falls below. But it's going to still show up in that animal search as blanked. And then as far as just a way to kind of provide this information in another setting that allows you as members to look it up, kind of read over it a little bit more thoroughly, there will be an incorporation of an EPD blanking info box that will be up near your essentially account number and name, also near that log out button. So if you click that, you will be taken to a website page that will display this information and a few examples on what happens with this initiative. So I wanted to talk a little bit about just accuracy changes. Obviously, we're dealing with accuracy here, and so there's quite a few things that go into those changes. And so as far as just number of progeny records when we consider a given trait, accuracy is based on heritability of the trait. So essentially what we see that's due to genetics and not the phenotype of the animal. So if we take into consideration a low heritable trait, that essentially means that environment's playing a larger role. So think of this more as our maternal traits like heifer, preg, metabolic energy, etc. Those traits are going to be lower, but as you can see, to make that gain in accuracy, we can get to 0.01, which is the threshold we have set for those traits, with just one record submitted on that animal. And so then as we get higher and higher, obviously you've already met the threshold, so the animal wouldn't be blanked. But you do need quite a few more records on a lower heritable trait in order to get that significant gain in accuracy, like up to 0.4. However, if we go over to the other end of things, a heritability of about a moderate of 0.3 or high of 0.5, you need less and less records to make that same jump to that accuracy value of 0.4. So again, if we're looking at high heritable traits, those are kind of our growth traits or carcass traits. And so you only need 13 actually on a progeny records to get up to 0.4. And that's quite a difference when we consider 70 for those low heritable traits. So again, the number of progeny greatly affects that accuracy, but it also affects the given trait based on that heritability of that trait. So another thing though to consider here is that genomic testing option that we've provided. So as you can see here, this is actually progeny equivalence of what you would receive if you just genetically test your animal. And so with this, you can see for calving ease direct or for birth weight, even weaning weight and yearling weight, you get about 25 progeny records from that given test. So that means you haven't submitted any progeny records. You could have essentially a 6-month-old sire, but because you've DNA tested him through genomics or those GGP panels we talked about, he will instantly have over 25 progeny being considered in those growth traits. And so that obviously gets you way above that, threshold that we've been talking about as 15 for growth traits. And so you're easily above that and will not be blanked if you genomically test that animal. If we look into some of the maternal traits, stayability, it gets you about 15 progeny records for that genetic test. And then if we're looking at carcass traits, anywhere from about 6 to 11, depending on the trait we're looking at. So there's been quite a few questions about what can I do then if I think they're going to get blanked, or kind of what is the protocol to go through once I think that this is going to happen to my calf crop. So essentially the first thing to ask is, has the data been collected yet? So for instance, have you just collected yearling weight records and you just haven't submitted them on RedsPro? Or have you, just kind of haven't gotten around to collecting them yet, and it's a little bit further away in the next few weeks? So if the data has been collected, you're just, essentially it's on that yellow notepad, it hasn't gotten submitted into the computer or RedsPro system, just submit your data. So when you can get the time and sit down and actually get that submitted, that'll be then incorporated into the genetic evaluation. And then that'll probably be about a 2-week process, depending when you submit that data. And then it'll be incorporated. And if that gets the animal above that given threshold for accuracy, then it should unblank those EPDs for that given animal. However, if you haven't collected the data, there's a few other questions to ask here. So are you going to collect it in the next seven weeks? Or are you, can you afford to kind of wait more than 7 weeks until the EPDs are released? And the main reason behind this is just the timing of genetic testing your animal. So if you can wait and you're willing, going to collect that data in the next 7 weeks, then just go ahead and submit the data in the next couple of weeks after you get it collected. And that same process will happen that 2-week about time frame before it gets included in the genetic evaluation. And then those EPDs are updated and unblanked from that information. However, if you can't afford to wait, you need that a little bit quicker. For instance, there's a sale catalog or something coming up that's affecting your animals and will, affect how you market them, then I would suggest genotyping that animal. It's essentially through any of those options, the GGP, ULD, LD, or HD. That's about $35, $50, or $90, depending on the test. But any of those options will get you that test and get you the information that can then be incorporated into the genetic evaluation. And then I have been getting quite a few questions about accuracy movement. And so just honestly, to break this down a little bit more, there's a lot of calculations that are included in that accuracy. And so it can get just a little bit hard to digest if I threw all that at you. And so let's just kind of refocus and talk about Michael Jordan. So if we're thinking about basketball and Michael Jordan, a field goal percentage, if we can think about this, it's more of like a shooting percentage. It's the number of successful shots to the number of attempted shots. So essentially how many baskets he made versus how many he attempted to make. And so if we think about it and look over at this table, in games 1 through 4, let's say Michael Jordan had a 75% shooting accuracy or shooting percentage. And so his accuracy for that was about 0.9. However, when we go into game 5, that first row, he only had a 50% field goal percentage. So with that, our accuracy is actually going to decrease because we didn't get that estimate right based on what those 4 games were. So he, there's a lot of things that go into effect there. Was the defense better? Was he just feeling not as good? Or what happened there to throw him off? But we didn't get that estimate correct. And so that's why that accuracy is going to drop. However, in instance, if we had the same game, but he got a 75% field goal percentage, then actually that accuracy would then increase because we did it correct, right? We estimated what he got correctly based on those first 4 games. And so if we think about this, these genetic evaluations are always changing. So as data, whether it's being taken out because there's disposal codes, et cetera, that are being entered on animals, or pedigree changes happen within that pedigree estimation, then these can lead to changes in the accuracy. Overall, we hope that this stays very level as we've tried to put into the model and the genetic evaluation different caveats to help counteract that. But again, we can't help if data is changing or things are happening. And so again, there's always going to be a bit of movement there. And then I think now we're going to go into our FAQ questions. So again, we had some questions that were submitted through the membership. And so then I think Lisa is going to take over from here.
Yes, thank you, Lindsay, for that informative overview. Many of the questions we are receiving about EPD blanking are specific to your operation, and we will provide a link later for you to schedule time with Lindsay to get those questions answered. Our chat box is also open for you to ask questions that we will answer at a later date. This afternoon, we wanted to take some time to review some common questions that members sent in for today's presentation. So, Lindsay, what does the association receive in financial benefits from DNA and genomic testing?
Yeah, so I think this question's probably just in reference to us asking to genotype your animals. And so I guess as a membership, we want you to know that, yeah, we're not getting any financial benefit from Neogen by asking for both phenotypes and genotypes in this certain initiative. And honestly, guys, the DNA department is pretty much a break-even budget line. And so there's nothing that we're receiving in extra gain from Neogen in asking you to make those genotypes. We're strictly doing it because we would like more information to make more accurate protocols. And we also did the genomic testing just to provide that other option in case certain things are more complicated or not cost effective for a given operation to collect.
Okay. Will the association be able to handle the increase in DNA samples that will come from people genomic testing their herds?
Yeah, so I hope everyone knows that we have a fully staffed DNA department. There's 3 ladies who are doing an excellent job keeping up with the flow of DNA that's coming in the office and answering your questions and phone calls, whether it's through email or phone. So yes, they are more than capable of handling this, and they're doing a great job right now. I would say, and they will continue to do a great job. And then as far as the approximate turnaround in these samples, that is due to the lab. So when we display that 5 to 7 week, it ranges depending on the time of year. That's because from the time we submit to the time we get those results, that is dependent on the lab. So we have no real, I guess, protocol or anything that's implementing that from the time it leaves here to the time it gets to the lab. And then when we get those results back, it takes that amount of time. And so ultimately, once it's complete, we are sending those results to you as a member after you've submitted that to us. So there's no holdup on our end. We're really just waiting for those results to get back to us to share them with you.
All right. I know you mentioned this, but how will this affect the EPDs presented to the judge during Cattlemen's Congress?
Yeah, so already kind of touched on this a little bit, but Cattlemen's Congress will not be affected by this. And so that catalog pool or show program pool will happen before this initiative goes into effect on January 3rd. And so that is going to not affect the EPDs that the judge will view at Cattlemen's Congress.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And just to go over that one more time, the Cattlemen's Congress EPDs will not be affected, but shows going forward, such as the National Western Stock Show and Fort Worth Stock Show, those will be in effect when the switch happens. So how will this affect my bull sale catalog if I'm pulling numbers during the time frame it switches?
Yeah, so obviously it'll affect your catalog if your animals fall below those accuracy thresholds. So on January 3rd at 8 a.m., this goes live. So if you are pulling your catalog after that time, then yes, they will be affected if they fall below those given accuracy thresholds.
All right. How do I know if my animals will be affected? Is there anywhere I can look up ahead of time to see the potential impact?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So on your own accounts, there's a My Report tab. And in your My Reports, you can click on your 2023 calf crop, and then you can go to the EPD report. This allows you to then sort through, and you can essentially order that report based on accuracy. And so once you do that, you can then kind of see which ones fall below a given accuracy level, and those will be the ones that will be affected. And so, if you're getting ready to submit data, I would wait to do that. But once you have most of your data in, or once you've genotyped your animals, go ahead and pull that report. And then if you need any help from us here in the office, we can certainly either point you in the direction of that if you can't find it, or certainly walk you through it if you need more help on that.
Okay. How will foreign animals be impacted?
Yeah, so foreign animals are not going to be impacted at this time. So those were not considered in this initiative. So only the 2023 calf crop is going to be affected. But if it's a 2023 animal that's a foreign import, it will not be affected at this time.
Okay. Can you talk more specifically about how Canadian imports will be affected?
Yeah, so this has been a little bit more of a hot topic from some of our friends that use those Canadian sires and dams within their operations. So the biggest thing I can say here is that there's a lack of data that comes with those animals as they're imported into our database. And so due to that, they would most likely have the most help if you could either submit a semen straw or a sample to DNA test them down here in the States. If you can incorporate that genomic data, that should help those sires and dams that you're utilizing to gain a bit more accuracy. And that should then help those calf crops that you have out of those animals.
Great. Thank you to our members who submitted these great questions, and to Lindsay for helping us to understand this initiative better. As I mentioned earlier, Lindsay will be available for 30-minute meetings that you can schedule by going to the link on the screen. You can access the calendar appointments at bit.ly/EPD blank, and that's all in lowercase. You can also point your phone's camera at the QR code on the screen to go directly to the link. And don't worry if you miss getting this link. We will be sending out an email later today with this link, as well as a link to this recorded event if you want to go back and review certain sections of Lindsay's presentation. If you have concerns about the EPD Blanking Initiative, we encourage you to contact your board members. You can access their contact information at redangus.org. Click on About Red Angus and follow the link to the board of directors. We hope this webinar has cleared up some of your questions about EPD blanking. This concludes the webinar. Thanks again for attending, and have a great rest of your day.